I'm your host, Carolyn Solo, LCSW, EMDR therapist, and mom of 3 daughters. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, and welcome to episode 139 of the Future Template Parent Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Carolyn Solo. Today, I want to talk a bit about being an EMDR consultant. And this is actually, I have realized now that I've outlined the script for this, going to be part 1 of a 2-part episode. But today I'm going to talk about why I became one, why I think it's worth doing, and what the requirements to become a consultant actually are. So I'm also going to provide an overview of the updated requirements for becoming an EMDR consultant. That's just been released by EMDR as of February 26th, I think, and what that could mean for your practice as a consultant. I think that EMDR has been in the process of reviewing what it means to be an EMDR consultant for at least the past year, maybe longer. Doing focus groups, talking to current consultants, just thinking about what should it mean to be a consultant, what are the standards for all consultants. So, and next week I'm going to talk about, this week I'm going to talk about what do these new standards say about becoming a consultant. And then next week I'm going to talk about what are the guidelines that are provided for what one should actually do when one becomes a consultant? Like what does a consultant role actually look like? So lots to digest there. I was going to do it all, but then it got kind of long and I thought sort of technical, a lot of details. So splitting it into 2. So this first episode is for you if you've ever thought about becoming an EMDR consultant, but feel a little bit overwhelmed by the whole process. So I'm going to lay it out for you a little bit. So I became a consultant in, I think, early 2024. I was a consultant in training starting in the fall of 2022, which meant that I could start seeing consultees for certification as a CIT, a consultant in training. You need to have at least a year of being a CIT before you can submit your application for a consultant. For me, it was about a year and a half. And I completed certification in 2022, just about 2 years after I became basic trained. So I moved, pretty quickly through the levels, became certified, early 2022. A few months later, decided to go for a consultant. If you've listened to a lot of the podcast, you know that I went from EMDR skeptic before and during basic training to EMDR devotee pretty quickly. And part of that process was also realizing how many gaps I felt like I had. I wanted consultation. I wanted more training. I wanted to develop my skills, which meant more practice. So it made sense to pursue certification because those are all the things that certification asks you to do. So why not get that nice badge and be able to say I'm certified? So it wasn't, honestly, getting certified wasn't that heavy of a lift because all the elements required were things I wanted to do or was already doing anyway. And once I got certified, the little overachiever in me thought, why not become a consultant? And so off I went. And I'm so glad I did pursue becoming a consultant, no regrets, because I love offering consultation and supervision. It's a great additional revenue stream. It doesn't have the same heaviness as clinical work. It provides some variety, but it's still clinically focused. And you're also building a network of colleagues, which continues to feel good. I also want to say that I think becoming a consultant as another income stream is one of the easier streams to add, right? I know so many of you out there are thinking, and should be, additional revenue streams beyond clinical work. And becoming a consultant and doing consultation as another stream is, I think, the sort of most low-hanging fruit, not unimportant, but easiest to get to and easiest to make money doing. It's certainly easier than trying to launch a course or a program or some other kind of product. You're not required to create any curriculum for starters. And EMDR provides a lot of resources to consultants, teaching resources, assistance with structuring consultation sessions, documentation, agreements for consultation, a message board for consultants to ask questions, and more, all included with your consultant membership, which is currently $350 annually, I believe. However, as of June 1st, I think that is going up by $50. That was one of the things released in the standards. And I think something else that's cool is that part of what's happened during this revising of the standards is EMDR has thought of even more ways to provide support and structure for consultants, which I think is awesome, and some continuity across consultants that to ensure that people getting certified and getting consultation on consultation to become consultants are getting what they need, and there's some sort of baseline expectation for what the consultation process will provide. But yeah, that $350, soon to be $400 is definitely cheaper than a lot of the other investments you might have to make for another income stream. Of course, you do have to pay for those 20 hours of consultation on consultation to become a consultant, but there's a lot of learning that happens there. You're not, yeah. The other thing that I think is great about becoming a consultant is you're not having to do a lot of education or problem awareness or work, that kind of marketing, to convince people that your product is worth buying, right? If you're selling a course, you first need to get people to know that you have a course, what it's about, why it's useful to them, convince them that they need it. That's a lot of work and can take a long time to establish. You need to establish trust, have an audience. That takes time to build. I don't know about you, but I'm always getting DMs from people on Instagram being like, hey, I'm a new business coach. Let me help you. I don't know who you are. Why would I mean, I also have one. I don't want another one, but like people are out there trying to get their name out there. It takes time. I'm not saying that those people shouldn't become business coaches. I'm saying, I don't know who you are. I have zero interest in you. Why would I be interested in what you're doing? Right? So you have to build that credibility in the audience if you're going to build some other income stream like a course or something, right? It's also helpful for becoming a consultant and having a consultant practice. But, you know, a lot of EMDR therapists know about becoming certified, know about becoming a consultant, right? You're not having to convince people that they need and want that, right? And the price of consultation, what you're going to be charging, you know, hour by hour, is likely a lot lower than what you might be charging for another product. And they're getting like a return on investment in that they're going to get something at the end of it, right? And you will, like I said, have an easier time finding consultees when you're ready to take them on as a CIT and ultimately a consultant if you are working now on creating an audience of some kind, whether it's on an email list, on social media, talking up consultation with your other EMDR colleagues, putting yourself out there on EMDR Facebook groups, whatever it is. And maybe a great way, you find a way to work at an EMDR basic training as one of the consultants who provide consultation during the training and after, right? We know that we need consultation that's part of basic training. So you have that. And then those people you're already going to be a warm audience. They've already worked with you. They're new EMDR therapists. They know you. They know your style. They are an ideal audience for you to advertise your consultation services to. Honestly, that's what I did. A lot of my certification consultation hours were with the person who was part of my basic training and was the consultant to my group. And I really liked her. She did a lot of ego states work that I really loved. And I was like, this is my person. So she did most of my hours. Easy, right? I didn't have to look for somebody else, vet somebody else. I already knew and liked this person and trusted them. Felt clinically aligned with them, right? So, however, you need to build an audience somehow. And if you're working on building it even before you start advertising your consultation services actively, you'll likely have some pent-up demand. You'll have people who are already interested in your perspective and expertise. And then when you mention consultation, people will be like, oh, I can work with this person now. And they're going to jump in. And also, I think part of what can work here is developing like a consultation niche. Like I certainly see, and this is, hey, you intensive therapists, this is great. I see a lot of therapists out there who are offering consultation, advertising, learning about intensives as one of the things that they offer. So, you know, you're niching down even within that. If you're creating that audience as you go, you're going to have those people who are interested. Caveat here about marketing. It is important to keep up the marketing that's been working for you, okay? Because, once you get those pent-up demand people on board, you're going to need to keep creating demand and growing your audience of devoted fans, right? And like I said, helpful with developing that audience is having a consultation niche, right? Whether it's intensives, IFS-informed EMDR, ego states, working with a particular population or niche, whatever, okay? But, you want to be carving out something for yourself. And for me, as for someone who's always loved teaching and been a teacher in a lot of capacities, consultation feels very natural. And it gave me another reason when I was pursuing becoming a consultant, to keep up with advanced training and build my skills, beyond my own desire just to do those trainings, because becoming a consultant requires that you do advanced training, and because I want to keep advancing the skills that I'm sharing with consultees. And finally, being a consultant has meant that I can offer hours towards certification or towards becoming a consultant through my group and individual intensive programs, which is an attractive element for many participants, right? So what does it actually take to become an EMDR consultant? Well, as of the start of 2026, as I've said, EMDRIA is tightening the requirements somewhat. I think this is a good idea, honestly, even though I did benefit from becoming a consultant when it was quite easy, too easy in some ways. They did feel a little loosey-goosey, those previous requirements. How's that for a boomer phrase? My dear grandmother, may she rest in peace, used to say that all the time, loosey-goosey. Anyway, so the previous requirements were relatively simple. What you needed was 20 hours of consultation from an EMDR consultation of consultation, right? So consultation about being a consultant. From an EMDR consultant, which could be any combination of group and individual hours. You needed to have completed 300 EMDR reprocessing hours with 75 clients, have a notarized letter to that effect. Just like, I think with certification, it's 75 and 25, and you need a notarized letter. You needed 12 advanced EMDR credits. You needed letters from your consultants recommending you, verifying your consultation hours, and that was it. And there were things saying you should be doing consultation with people, but there were no and maybe 5 people. It was a suggestion, not a requirement. And there was no way that they were validating or confirming that you've done this. So sure, take some time to collect all the paperwork and bits here and there. And of course, you got to do advanced training, but the EMDR therapists I know are hardly ever lacking in that area. All we ever do is sign up for training after training. We care so much about providing the best care we can. And we often have more trainings on our must-do list than time and money allow us to complete. So that's hardly ever an issue. Okay, so what has changed? Well, it's all on the EMDR website. And when you look up the consultant application, here's what the changes are. So first of all, if you submitted your CIT form, Consultant in Training Declaration Form, declaring who you're working with, and began the process to become a consultant up until December 31st, 2025, you're subject to the 2025 and earlier requirements, and you can still use any consultation hours you require towards your application, and the up to 2025 standard, those are the ones that apply to you, the loosey-goosey ones. However, the CIT submission form, which is the first step of the consultant application process, was frozen from January 1st, 2026, and will stay frozen until April 1st, 2026, a few weeks from now, to allow the new requirements to take effect. So if you still have to submit your CIT form, if you haven't done that yet, you will not be able to do so until April 1st, and you will be subject to the new consultant application requirements. Also, just know you cannot submit your application to become a consultant before 1 year from when you submitted your CIT declaration. So if you submit your CIT declaration, say on June 30th, 2026, the earliest you can submit your completed consultant application will be June 30th, 2027, or maybe July 1st. I don't know how they count it. 2027. So one full year. That's one thing. New requirements, number of reprocessing hours, 300, number of clients with whom you've done that, 75 stays the same. But there is now a requirement for how many consultees and how many total consultation hours you need to have provided to consultees to become a consultant. Previously, it was suggested that you provide consultation to at least 5 consultees, but it was not required. And now the requirements are very clear and very structured. As a CIT, you must provide consultation to at least 5 consultees who are working towards certification, to at least 5 therapists, and at least 15 hours of consultation, right? You can count a single hour of consultation with a single consultee and it counts. So you could feasibly do a single hour of consultation with 4 consultees and 11 hours with 1 consultee, and that would still count, or 3 hours each with 5 or whatever, but adds up to 15. But that needs to be verified, unlike before. And consultation on consultation requirements have changed as well. So you getting consultation. It used to be that you needed 20 consultation hours, and that could be all group or a combination of group and individual. And groups could be as large as 8. Now, you must complete at least 10 individual hours, and max 10 can be the group consultation. And groups max out at 4. That's a big change. Used to be you could be in groups of up to 8. Now the groups max out at 4 for you to get your consultation in. You can only submit consultation hours for a max 3 consultants. It used to be you could have as many as you wanted. And every consultant, every one of those 3 consultants who provides you with hours and is verifying the hours that you say you've done a consultation with them and with consultees, they must complete a new online form called a CIT verification, evaluation, and recommendation form. This did not exist before at all. And that contains a verification of your hours with that consultant, and presumably with the consultees as well. An evaluation of you as a CIT, of your skills, and a recommendation from that consultant. And finally, you still need to complete 12 EMDRIA advanced credits, but here's the difference. 3 of them must be, 1, a 1.5 EMDRIA credit course called Foundations of EMDR Consultation, and 2, a 1.5 EMDRIA credit course called Core Competencies in EMDR Consultation. These are new courses that have never been required before. I actually think it's an excellent idea to have these courses. I don't know, I'm interested in them to see what they are all about. The other thing, like I said, the fee goes up to $50, right, to $400. So that's a lot, I know, and a lot of like dense stuff. So like I said, to keep this from getting too dense and long-winded, I'm making a part 2 of this episode next week, which will talk about the consultant standards and guidelines that were also released about how do you actually engage in best practices as an EMDR consultant. It's about a 50-page document that talks about what EMDR consultation should look like. So there's some consistency, actual guidance on what we should be providing as EMDR consultants to our consultees, both to consultees who are working towards certification and consultees who are working towards becoming consultants, those to whom we are providing that consultation on consultation. Real guidelines for what it actually means to practice as an EMDR consultant and to engage in best practices while doing so. I think this is really, really good. I'm really glad EMDRIA saw the need for this and has put time and resources behind it, making this happen. And I'm going to share my thoughts and reflections on these new. I think they're good. I've been looking at them. I have some stuff to say about them. Hopefully, though, the clarification on the application requirements has been helpful. This little brief overview. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to where you can find this information for yourself if you want to look it up on the EMDRIA website. I also hope you found it useful to hear my thoughts on why it's worth it to become an EMDR consultant. And maybe it's something that you will consider if you haven't already. So Be sure to listen to part 2 of this next week. Thank you, as always, for listening to the podcast, for sharing the podcast, for telling me you're enjoying the podcast. That keeps me going. I really appreciate it. And it keeps me, noodling around thinking for new things to bring to you that are useful. So take good care, everyone. Part 2 on this episode comes next week. Thanks so much. Goodbye.